Hey everyone, welcome back. We're diving into some pretty deep waters today, and I'm really excited about this one. If you're new to Buddhism, or even just Buddhist concepts, I think you're really gonna dig this.
Yeah, it's definitely a foundational text that we're going to be looking at.
So we're taking a look at the Mahāsatipaṭṭhāna Sutta, which is often called the Great Discourse on the Establishing of Awareness.
That's it. And we're going to try to kind of break it down for you a little bit today.
Yeah, kind of unpack some of the core ideas. I mean, the
Mhm.
text itself makes some pretty big claims.
It does, yeah.
It calls this the one and only way for inner purification,
Right.
moving beyond sorrow, ending suffering, understanding truth, and ultimately experiencing nibbana or liberation.
Yeah, big stuff, big stuff.
Quite a mission statement.
It is.
And the roadmap for this one and only way is what's known as the fourfold establishing of awareness, or Satipaṭṭhāna.
Right.
And these are 4 areas that we learn to really pay attention to in our experience. So we're talking about the observation of the body.
Kayanupasa.
Kayanupasana, our sensations.
Vedanupasana.
Vedananupasana, the state of our mind.
Chittanupasana.
Chittanupasana. And then the contents of our mind, our thoughts, ideas.
Dhammanupasana.
Dhammanupasana.
Yeah, and as we kind of get into this, especially if you're coming to this fresh, it's important to kind of understand this isn't just about reading a book or memorizing facts.
Right.
You know, the Mahāsatipaṭṭhāna Sutta is really about a practical method for gaining self-knowledge
Mm-hmm.
through direct experience.
Right.
A key part of this practical approach, and something we'll be spending a good bit of time on today, is the concept of Vedana, which refers to our bodily sensations.
Okay, so let's unpack that idea of Vedana a little bit. Now, when we say sensations, we're not just talking about intense feelings like pain or extreme pleasure, are we?
No,
We're talking about the whole spectrum
the whole spectrum.
of bodily sensations that are constantly arising and fading away. And the text makes a really interesting point about this, about sensations,
Yep.
doesn't it? Something about everything flowing together with them.
Yeah, that's a crucial insight.
Yeah.
The Buddha is quoted as saying, Vedana samasaran sabidhamma. Everything that arises in the mind flows together with sensations. So what's interesting here, especially for someone who's maybe new to this, is this idea that our mental states and our physical experiences aren't separate.
Right.
Every thought, every emotion actually has a corresponding sensation in the body, even if it's very subtle.
Right.
You think about getting nervous, you might feel a flutter in your stomach, right?
Yeah.
That's Vedana.
So it's almost like our bodies are continuously giving us feedback, a kind of ongoing commentary on what's happening in our minds.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the text goes on to categorize Vedana in a few different ways.
Right.
Broadly speaking, there are 5 types,
Yeah.
including pleasant, unpleasant, pleasant mental feeling. Unpleasant mental feeling. And those that are neither unpleasant nor pleasant.
Right.
But for the purpose of the Satipaṭṭhāna Sutta, the focus narrows a bit, right?
Yeah.
We're looking more specifically at 3 types of Vedana
Yes.
that are directly related to the body.
Yes, exactly. While those mental feelings are definitely important in the wider scope of Buddhist teachings, in this particular discourse, the emphasis is on pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral body sensations.
Right.
So those are our primary focus today because they offer a really direct way to understand ourselves.
Right. And there's a really significant reason why these body sensations are highlighted. The text suggests that they act as a direct avenue for the attainment of fruition, nibbana, through what it calls a strong dependence condition, Mahāsatipaṭṭhāna. Think of it as a very direct and powerful link.
Okay.
So for someone just starting out, consider this. Our experience of the world is constantly coming to us through our senses, right? And these bodily sensations are the most immediate and tangible part of that experience.
Yeah.
By learning to directly observe them without judgment, we can begin to understand the patterns that lead to dissatisfaction or suffering.
Okay, so things like the temperature in the room, what we've eaten, even how we're sitting or standing,
Yeah.
all of that has an impact on these body sensations. It's not just random, is it?
Not at all. The text specifically mentions environment, utu, food, and posture or support, sansanis, as key things that condition our bodily sensations.
Okay.
Just think for a moment about how different your body feels on a very hot day versus a cool one. Or the difference after eating a big meal compared to a light snack, or how your neck might feel if you've been hunched over a computer all day. These are everyday examples of how both external and internal factors shape our Vedana.
Right.
So by paying attention, we start to see the connection.
And by paying attention to these sensations, we can start to see the interplay between our inner state and the world around us. And the text talks about the six sense doors.
Yeah.
Eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind as the points where this contact happens.
Exactly. The external world is interacting with us through these 6 avenues. And all of those interactions are experienced at the body level in terms of sensation.
Right.
Every sight, every sound, every smell, taste, touch, and even every thought
Right.
creates a corresponding Vedana.
Right.
And here's where it gets really interesting when we connect this to a core Buddhist concept, dependent origination, or paikasa-mupada.
Oh, I've heard that term before.
Yeah?
It's about how everything is interconnected.
Yeah.
And arises based on certain conditions, right?
Yeah.
So how do sensations fit into that big picture?
Well, the text highlights a really crucial link in this chain of interconnectedness, sense contact, phasa. That moment of interaction between a sense door and an object, right?
Yeah.
Leads to sensation, dana. And then sensation, in turn, leads to craving, tana. So if a sensation is pleasant, our natural tendency is to want more of it. If it's unpleasant, we immediately want it to go away.
Yeah.
And this craving is identified as a primary root of our suffering. So you can see how sensations become this pivotal point,
Yeah.
the immediate cause for the arising of craving.
Right.
And ultimately, that feeling of unease or dissatisfaction that we call suffering.
That makes a lot of sense. So instead of just automatically reacting to whether a sensation feels good or bad, the practice here is to observe the sensation itself, to really see it as it arises and then passes away.
Right.
And the text even gives a definition of Vedana. That which feels the object is Vedana. Its characteristic is to feel. It is the essential taste of experience. It's really emphasizing this direct felt quality of our experience.
Exactly. It's about learning to step back from our usual interpretations and judgments of sensations, and simply experiencing their raw, felt quality in the moment. But just feeling them isn't the whole picture, as the text goes on to explain.
Right.
To truly understand what's happening, we need to connect this experience of sensation
Okay.
to the 3 fundamental characteristics of all phenomena, often called the tilakank.
Ah, yes. Impermanence, anicca, suffering, dukkha, and selflessness, anatta.
Right.
These are like the core truths about the nature of reality in Buddhism, aren't they?
They are. And the Mahāsatipaṭṭhāna Sutta emphasizes the importance of directly experiencing these truths within ourselves and our own bodies and minds.
Right.
While all 3 are incredibly important, the Buddha is quoted in another text, the Meghiya Sutta,
Okay.
as particularly stressing the importance of understanding anicca,
Mm-hmm.
or impermanence. The idea is that when we deeply realize how everything is constantly changing, the understanding of the other 2, suffering and selflessness, naturally follows.
Okay. So when we're observing these sensations in our bodies, we're also meant to be noticing how they arise and then disappear.
Right.
That constant flux, that's the anicca at play in our physical and mental experience. And this direct experience of things arising and passing away is closely linked to vipassana, or insight meditation.
Exactly. The text actually states that this very experience of anicca, as it manifests in our mind and body, is vipassana.
Okay.
And vipassana, in this context, is essentially the same as the practice of Satipaṭṭhāna, the establishing of awareness. So you can see how it all comes back to this focused and non-reactive observation of our moment-to-moment experience.
Now, the Mahāsatipaṭṭhāna Sutta begins with the observation of the body, things like our breath, our posture.
Right.
But it's clear that the practice doesn't stop there.
Right.
It moves on to sensations, then the mind, and finally, mental contents.
Right.
And there are these 3 key phrases that get repeated throughout each of these sections, right?
Right.
About observing arising, passing away, and both arising and passing away.
Yes. Those 3 phrases are absolutely central to the practice. They are samadaya dhammanupasi vaviharati. One dwells observing the phenomenon of arising.
Okay.
Vaya dhammanupasi vaviharati. One dwells observing the phenomenon of passing away.
Okay.
And samadaya vaya dhammanupasi vaviharati. One dwells observing the phenomenon of both arising and passing away. Experiencing these 3 aspects of impermanence directly is how we begin to develop paññā, or wisdom.
Go.
That deeper understanding and equanimity that comes from seeing the constantly changing nature of reality.
Right.
This wisdom, in turn, leads to detachment and ultimately liberation from suffering.
And this brings us to the concept of sampajanya, which the text suggests is often misunderstood. It's more than just being generally aware of what we're doing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It has a more specific and technical meaning in the context of this practice.
Exactly. While sampajanya can certainly have like the general meaning of just being knowingly aware, within the specific framework of vipassana and the path toward nibbana, it signifies a deeper, constant, thorough understanding of impermanence. To be sampajana, we need to be continuously mindful of this impermanence, anicca, objectively observing our mind and body, without reacting or getting carried away by our thoughts and feelings. This isn't about intellectualizing or imagining.
Right.
It's about a direct, moment-to-moment experience, bhakkanubodhi, seeing reality as it truly is. And this direct experience, again, seems to be very closely linked to observing Vedana.
Right.
The text indicates that with sensations, we can experience this arising and passing away very clearly.
And tangibly.
Absolutely. Sampajanya is, in fact, described here as directly perceiving the arising and passing away of Vedana. And this applies to all four aspects of our being.
Okay.
Body, sensations, mind, and mental contents. It's this continuous awareness of the impermanent nature of our experience, particularly as we feel it through our sensations. That is really key to this practice.
And the text mentions these three qualities that are consistently repeated.
Right.
Atapi, ardent, diligent.
Right.
Sampajano, with thorough understanding.
Right.
And satima, mindful, aware.
Right.
So sampajanya, this deep and continuous understanding of impermanence through the observation of Vedana, is a really crucial part of this whole practice of establishing awareness.
Exactly. Without this constant and thorough understanding of impermanence, especially as we experience it through our sensations, the practice of Satipaṭṭhāna wouldn't be complete, according to this discourse.
Okay.
As the Buddha himself is quoted as saying, there are these three types of body sensations: pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. And the fourfold Satipaṭṭhāna is to be cultivated for the complete understanding of these three sensations.
Now, towards the end of the material we're looking at, it briefly touches on the Four Noble Truths as part of Dhammanupassana, the observation of mental contents. For someone who's new to Buddhism, these are incredibly foundational. How do they fit into this understanding of Vedana and impermanence?
Well, the Four Noble Truths provide the overarching framework, I guess you could say, for understanding why we experience suffering and the path that leads to its end.
Okay.
So through the lens of what we've discussed today, we can see how the first noble truth, the truth of suffering, dukkha, encompasses this kind of inherent suffering in life.
Right.
Not just physical pain, but also mental unease, dissatisfaction, and the fundamental problem of clinging to things that are constantly changing.
Right. And the second noble truth, the truth of the arising of suffering, dukkha samadaya, points to craving, tacha, as the root cause.
Right.
And as we talked about earlier, this craving arises based on our sensations, that natural tendency to want to hold on to pleasant feelings and push away unpleasant ones.
Precisely. The text specifically mentions, different kinds of craving.
Right.
Like the craving for sensual pleasures, the craving for continued existence, and even the craving for non-existence. It also notes how this craving arises and takes root in what we find appealing and pleasurable.
Right.
Our six senses, the objects they encounter, our consciousness of those objects, the initial contact, and those resulting sensations. So you can see how understanding Vedana is really fundamental to understand how craving gets started and keeps going.
And while the text doesn't go into a lot of detail here, the third noble truth, the truth of the cessation of suffering, dukkha nirodha, and the fourth noble truth, the truth of the path, dukkha nirodhagamani payada, are really implied by the very practice of satihana itself. By understanding this principle of impermanence and observing our sensations without getting attached to them, we begin to loosen the grip of craving and naturally move towards the end of suffering.
That's right. The path is this very practice of establishing awareness, of diligently observing the arising and passing away of all aspects of our experience, especially our sensations, with that constant and thorough understanding we call sampajanya.
So for someone who's just beginning to explore Buddhism, what would you say are the most important takeaways from this deep dive into the Mahāsatipaṭṭhāna Sutta?
Well, I think the key things to remember are the central importance of developing self-awareness.
Right.
Through these four areas of observation.
Yeah.
Body, sensations, mind, and mental contents. But particularly to recognize the crucial role of observing dādana,
Okay.
or bodily sensations. as a very direct way to begin to understand the nature of reality and how feelings of dissatisfaction or suffering arise. And underpinning all of this is the foundational principle of impermanence, Seneca.
Right.
The understanding that everything is constantly changing.
Right.
This understanding is presented as a fundamental key to liberation.
So it really seems like this Mahāsatipaṭṭhāna Sutta offers a very practical and direct way to understand ourselves and the world around us.
It does. It's an invitation to turn our attention inward.
Yeah.
And to explore our own experience
Mhm.
with a mindful and non-judgmental awareness.
So as you go about your day, perhaps take a moment to notice your own direct experiences of sensations. Pay attention to the pleasant, the unpleasant, and even those neutral feelings. How might those sensations be connected to your desires, to the things you find yourself wanting to hold on to or push away?
Right.
And can you begin to observe the impermanent nature of these feelings? How they arise and then naturally fade away?
Yeah.
Maybe this initial look into the Mahāsatipaṭṭhāna Sutta has sparked your curiosity to explore further,
Yeah.
to delve deeper into this foundational text or other core Buddhist teachings. It's a rich tradition with a lot to offer for understanding ourselves and the human experience.
It is.
That's all the time we have for today. See you next time.